That's okay. Yeah, we're good. Is this right? Oh wait, did I do this right? Why does this look weird? 1 second. This isn't quite right. Oh, this one. Haha. Okay. I'm here. Okay, and then welcome if anyone's here. I'm gonna make people watch a thing with me because I think it's real funny.
Then obviously if you're openly neurodivergent, that's a different story. Hey, Jane.
Hello.
Yeah. Hey, Jane.
Can I make you watch my TikTok?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I'm not
All
sure
right.
if you can make her, but
I can invite you with a lot of insistence. Okay, I just did this. I am so proud of this one. I've never had anything get really big on TikTok, but I'm like, please let this one, because it's just, okay. All right. Let me make sure can you hear it or no? Maybe not. Hold on. I think I have to do this.
Can you get louder?
Okay, 1 second. If I put it.
there is an extension on Chrome called Volume Master, and you can increase it up to 600% for any video.
I'm gonna put this. Is this too loud now?
For the next 5,000 years, I will write, paint, and even one day animate stories to help to teach the neurotypicals who is a psychopath and who is a helpful neurodivergent. Now tell me, what have you learned about our adventurer?
He's a man.
Yes, but how about our wise wizard?
He's an old man.
Yes. What if we say the wise wizard is now a woman?
Is she hot?
But no, she's still old.
It's a witch.
Let's make the adventurer a woman.
I have been a loyal fan since my childhood. How dare you put a Mary Sue?
I want to rule the world.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you. I'm very pleased with that. Okay. All right.
Funny.
Hopefully that one does well. Okay. I'm trying to figure out burnout stuff. So today I don't really have a specific set topic besides for just like whatever people need. I don't have a needed topic. I've been just acknowledging burnout because of everything. But that's why I made the video.
Man, I hear ya, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And this has to be like on screen.
Yeah, thank you. I don't even know how to do anything yet, but I keep trying to figure it out. So if I think of something communal, I will definitely reach out because it's been weird.
I have an idea.
Yes.
If you don't mind.
Go.
I had a situation, interestingly, on Thursday where me and an older friend of mine went over to a flea market or whatever, and the car stopped sort of when we got there, right? There was an incident, I think specifically because there was no coolant in the engine, which what would happen in that case is that the engine would then overheat. It triggered the fan, which would drain the battery. So then you'd have to kind of like jumpstart the system by pushing the car, right? And hope that once you jump in while it's moving, it'll, trigger the ignition, you'll be able to get rolling. So I mentioned this example because I feel maybe there are some analogous parallels to how burnout may happen in that there is a process that is triggered, which drains one's energy, and it comes from a lacking element, perhaps, right?
Yes, that makes sense to me. And I think also, since burnout seems to be understudied at this point, what's kind of upsetting is they're putting us into burnout, like the autistic and the neurodivergence, without having the infrastructure to look at it. So I'm hoping other countries are taking advantage of how like traumatic things are to better understand how to manage like specifically the neurodivergent aspects of what gets called burnout. Like maybe we'll end up with a new name for it even. But I feel like I get a little bit more okay when I think that maybe there'll be another group for us to talk to. Like we just need, I can't talk to certain humans. They're lost causes, and they center themselves too, like, and they're just being really weird about stuff. So the thing
What kinds of people?
Just wow. Great question. I think,
or you can go ahead. Like, what do you want to find that you haven't been finding yet? I don't know if you were heading there.
Yeah, no. I was trying to think, because like I'm like it's almost everyone, but you can't talk to people about the things I want to talk about, right? Like, because they either don't know enough about it, even if they would be receptive to it, or they're potentially somebody that's already influenced by dangerous people that are trying to burn us out because they think it's funny.
Yeah.
Or they're someone who tries to burn us out because they think it's funny. So I'm like, well.
Oh my gosh, they think it's funny?
Yeah, they do.
Okay, I have been around lots of toxic kinds of people, but not that bad. So which spheres are you running into, the ones who think it's funny?
So that's been my experience online as a woman who tries to post regularly. And even yeah, like I would say, like if I try to be in the spaces I might want to be online, it's usually a decent chunk of that. I can use the internet for like activities. Like if I use it just for ballet, I'd be fine, right? Like everyone in ballet is fine. But if I go to the wider public sphere or public square online, even though I really think it's very important for me to be, I meet those people all the time.
Okay, so I'm hearing something here. Okay, like let me ask like a info gathering question before I share my like thought, like to see if you're actually running into what I see a lot of people running into. So when did you discover that you're in autistic burnout?
Okay, I think I'm probably like halfway through the worst of, like, let me put that differently. I think, like, on a scale of like the worst burnout I could have, I'm only like half there, and so I'm trying to not burn out worse.
Right.
And I think I've had a low level simmering that I've been able to adapt to, like kind of like traumatic growth instead of getting messed up by it for like the entire 10-year period of the social behavioral shifting into the global problem, or I guess the US problem. So a lot of it is very much informed by that, and then the effect it's having on people's comments about disability, and then I'm spending more time with disability-centered arts organizations, which is really great, and I'm going to keep doing that, but they're also very aware of how this is impacting like the whole cause of disability awareness and justice and accessibility. So I'm like thinking, okay, there needs to be a new disability rights movement. I've kind of had that in my mind for a while, but to think that at the same time you have people that are just really weird and cruel out of nowhere. It's like being a drive-by or something. Like they really don't have any purpose but to try to find certain people and target them. And so the burnout is like, I was told when I first found those people online, oh, just ignore them. They're just online. And now this is happening.
Okay, got it. So my question was, when time-wise?
Time-wise, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like time-wise, like it's the 10 years, and then I keep cycling with it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So I'm in another cycle.
Did you realize? So I remember, like when I'll give you myself as an example. So I probably ended up in autistic burnout around June 2023. I may have been in the low level simmering back and forth before that.
Right.
But I didn't know it was a thing or that I was in it until September or October 2023. So I'm asking, when was your September 2023 moment?
Yeah, I'm basically this week. I think it hit me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I do notice that it is very hard. Like, yeah, there is a lot of misunderstanding around autistic burnout. The term itself, as you probably know, has only been around about 7 years or so, and a lot of people misunderstand it. A lot of people think it's a thing that can be resolved with a weekend off. A lot of people don't see as many of the systemic factors that you do. And I got another question for you. Do you find that you have found it easier to communicate other things about the autistic experience? Like, do you find that some of that came to you more naturally and through experimentation, where it was easier like 3 years post diagnosis versus like as you were getting your diagnosis?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, well, and for me, that also comes in spurts, I think. And what I can describe, it's like some of it's not accessible. So when I first got diagnosed, a lot of things were clicking into place, but I just mostly had to process how painful it was that this was somewhat solvable. Like the bigger problems that happened didn't need to happen. So there was a lot of like, oh, that also was autism. Oh, that also was autism. So it was like removing a lot of blame from inappropriate narratives and going to like, oh, okay, that's understandable. So once I got to that point, I was like, okay, well, now let's try to actually understand how my brain works, because that's what I was trying to do. Like, I think we all kind of know, like, we're different.
Yeah.
And then the past year, I'm really comfortable with everything I've learned, and I'm really confident with my theory, and I'm seeing research come out, and that's all good. And the world in the past, well, since I'd say like this wave started in October, November, because it was the election, and I found out about my hip. Like, it was basically election day. Next day, I find out that I have dysplasia, and they wanted to have this major surgery on me, and I was like, and I eventually decided not to. But that's when all of that hit. And yeah, since then it's been better. Like, I danced at a intensive for Access, this disability. Like, it's like mixed disabled, and also some people with neurodivergency, and some people that are just able-bodied people, or a dance company. And so I did their intensive, and that was good. So like I'm kind of like long-winded on this because I'm trying to understand it while I'm thinking about it.
I understand. I don't need like all of the details there. I think like I've gotten the yes that I need from all of this to make the point that I'm going to make now.
Great.
I mean, like, happy to hear the rest if it helps you process for other reasons. So the reason I'm bringing this up is, okay, you had this realization a week ago, and you're able to process things for yourself pretty fast. I know, like, you knew autistic burnout was a thing earlier, and then there's seeing all the systemic issues caused by it. I find that, like, for me, so this happened, I discovered that autistic burnout was a thing and that I was in it when I was running a group for neurodivergent people, which didn't end up getting anywhere. And then, like, shortly after, I hear, people coming in saying they're an autistic burnout, and they misunderstand the stuff that I understand, but my, like, lived experience understanding of it is still very new. And there was a lot of trauma there of, like, how I was pushed into it, as you said, without infrastructure to get out of it. And it's been, like, more and more and more traumatic experiences up until, like, February or March of this year, when I was trying to see, like, Will people over here understand what I need and help me? Will people over here understand? And then, like, going just into the public square to do activism work on top of it at that kind of time, I could understand it bringing way more misunderstanding than you may be equipped to handle. Definitely more than I would be equipped to handle, when I know there's like not the infrastructure. Like, I remember you had a Threads post at one point that was like, there's a lot of shit going on. I'm disabled. I can't fix all of it myself. And being an autistic burnout is an additional disability. So I really would like to focus on, how can we get you the support you need? You're already doing a lot. You're teaching at a school for disabled folks. You're participating in other disability arts orgs. You're doing so much already. And you are in burnout. And I wonder, like, what's keeping you in burnout, and how may we be able to address that without you needing to do that search in the public square. And in the meanwhile, you can already talk about things that are easier for you to talk about and are misunderstood less in the public square. Like the stuff that you're already comfortable talking about autism.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because otherwise, what I start to do is analyze the work that they're not doing. I'm not trying to. I don't like using us and them language,
Yep.
but
I
neurotypicals
know
will mess with things that they don't understand. And I'm like, okay, well, someone has to be keeping track of all these things that you're fucking up that you can't even see.
You can do that when you're out of burnout too.
Exactly.
But yeah, I get it.
Also, hello, Timochi. That's true. The difficult thing is that, like, I don't know where the burnout starts and the like underemployment. Well, it's not underemployment. It's because everyone's getting underpaid, right? And like,
yeah,
the thing that
other systemic issues.
Yeah, systemic, exactly. And the stupid budget thing is going to affect Hip Hop for Change. It's probably going to affect. I haven't talked to the college yet because we're on a break right now, but I don't know what's going to do to their funding. But I already, it doesn't. None of these jobs pay very well that I've ever done, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
That's not why I'm doing them. But then I don't have resources to like work on. Like, I can't travel. I can't go to classes regularly. I can't afford to do anything, and I think that's not helping.
Yeah.
Like, I can't afford to go to therapy. I can't afford to take care of my body as well as I should be. Like, I'm conscious of that, and now I'm in a society that's like, well, they're literally just telling people that are like really incapable of working, well, why don't you just work? You're good enough to work, and I don't even know what they think work means. Like, it's like, I feel like I'm actually surrounded by insanity to the point that I'm losing some hope, I guess. And I don't know. I don't want okay, here's what I came up with. Like, I started thinking about it and looking into it. I was like, oh, money itself actually came from religion, which you wouldn't know unless you looked into it, right? Because nobody cares that that's where it came from. But it came from a temple system. And it's got a really weird history, actually. And I was like, oh, like, is money even sensible? Like, is money just part of a patriarchal religion in and of itself? I'm like, well, that's a shitty question to have to contemplate in the middle of this, because I'm like, well, maybe that's why everything keeps getting screwed up. Maybe it's not just capitalism and that, people going to yada yada. I'm like, maybe it's just money, literally money itself is the problem, because there's very limited studies on greed, like I said last week. Anyways, all this to say, my brain is having a hard time juxtaposing. I actually do need more resources to take care of myself. I theoretically know how to. And then I'm like, well, the thing I can do then is sleep with my intergalactic television on, because my brain can just produce things for me. And I'll just live in my brain, right? But so I'm doing that to regulate, which I don't hate. It seems to be helpful for the burnout. but it's also
Right.
compounding the whole stress of it. It's not making the problem worse because I don't think I have the energy to
Yeah.
do much, but
I
yeah.
I totally get it. Yeah, I find I was just having a similar dilemma yesterday of to find employment, and if there's a possibility of the country splitting, which I don't know if it will.
Right.
Do I need to find a way to move to California right now, even
Right.
though I should be applying for disability, but that's exactly when the system is getting even more broken.
Right.
And so there's like all that. And then like I hear more and more about different issues. Like there was another reason I haven't read the book Bright Sphere recommended yet is like the whole identity versus and like personas and all of that. That just came up as like a sub bullet of other things and of like the language thing. And then like I just hear things like that and I'm like, how urgently do I need to understand this, and how deeply, like how much does this impact me? That can be really tough. And like going into public spaces, like we can often get even more overwhelmed with info. And the same thing with just like processing the same info over and over on our own. And I find myself also like I've been distancing myself from a lot of social spaces in Chicago because there's not much intelligent understanding of neurodivergence, but intergenerational trauma is a buzzword among the artsy types. And so I am limiting, I've figured out how much do I really need to understand my intergenerational trauma. Like, I know I don't need to completely understand it to survive. Meanwhile, neurodivergent stuff, like it's more pressing for me. So that's where my head is at. But then I go to these spaces and they like look at me weird if I mention the stuff I'm processing, but they just trauma dump about their intergenerational trauma on me, and it reminds me of mine, and they expect me to hold space without even asking for consent. So I've been like pulling up largely on my own, hanging out with one friend sometimes, doing activities which are nice, but making sure not to talk about anything but the activity because I don't want to hear about people's intergenerational trauma.
Right.
And having a lot of space just being alone with my brain trying to process this stuff. I do find like distractions can sometimes be helpful, like sometimes a light comedy show that's engaging enough but not all about systemic stuff may be a nice break from what's going on in my brain. Or like I started playing this game on YouTube, like they're the YouTube playable games where you like make a makeup palette by selecting colors from an image and then you put it on like an animated person.
That sounds nice.
Like that's been fun. Yeah, like I find things like that helpful. Another question for you, like once your brain discovers a systemic thing, do you like have a hard time with like I'm gonna think about it for an hour and then do something else? Like does your brain kind of like lock in?
Yeah, that's its mode. It doesn't yeah, it won't stop. I've never really been able to get it to, unless, I mean, the only thing I can do is go to like dance classes. Like if I physically move my body around, that's like the only thing that gives me a break. And that's why I'm kind of like, this one in particular, I think I'm getting resentful because that is now getting very challenging to orchestrate. And I don't know, like I'm not quite sure what to do. Like yeah, because like dance gets me out, but I can't. I don't know.
Taking
perhaps
walks.
You need to try out different potential ways to regulate, new ones, different breathing exercises, right? And things like that.
Maybe.
Movement is a big one. So I know with the dance class, there's also the being told what to do, the other people being there, like the other kinds of stimulation.
Music. Yeah.
It's just movement on your own, like, okay, like dancing to music at home or taking a walk, like do things like that do anything for you?
I can try doing that. Yeah, I mean, I can try doing some dance to music, but yeah, it's there's just all this pressure to try to monetize things too. Like if I'm practicing dance and I'm like, well, am I going to film it and then see if people will pick up and then like it's just this. I kind of hate social media because people told me I'd be good for it, and now I'm like, I don't think I am. You know, so that's been kind of rough. Like I've just been processing that I don't think I'm gonna be successful on any social media, and I was given the impression I would be because yeah, I don't really know what to do anymore. I think I've hit a point of like I don't yeah, this is the burnout.
If I can
can't
speak
talk.
frankly, because the book that I also share with you, Tara, is that it talks about like one of the identity making technologies, Profilicity, right? When it came in and it was about profile curation. I think what I've kind of figured out alongside other research that I've been doing in different disciplines and from different thinkers is that the online space, like, you know, the algorithmic way that we kind of do our different social media profiles and whatever, it still reflects the same well, you know, the same hierarchical systems that we have in society anyway. So therefore, most people are going to have a, you know, a low-end profile, the vast majority of people. So it becomes just very difficult to grow it bigger. And then there's obviously still the pressure of like you want to participate so that you're not invisible because, right, everybody else is incentivized to be online, to have a profile. So I think like what the idea there is, it's trying not to get too stressed out in analytics and in how you're doing, and then sort of just kind of like if you need to take a break from it, you can do that. But then it's just more, it's like a supplementary part to your life. And then you'd also have, you know, like for example, Jane was talking like, you know, there's the pressure perhaps in her, you know, and if she was doing some dancing, that she has to put it online and share because the people might be doing the same thing, and she, you know, the algorithm will send you like the same feeds and the same videos, so it'll incentivize you to do that. But it's not an absolute. You can also dance for yourself. You can also dance sincerely for like a group or like an event. So I think it's just having a good spread of different motivations for why you do different things can maybe help balance out, because then if you're not getting a big return, let's say on your profile for something you're doing, you're going to get the burnout because you're putting a lot of investment of energy, but you're not getting a return from being seen by other people.
Right, and that's and it's okay, if you compare it, when people do get successful on social media, they get all of this income that then allows them to do the things they want to do, not only on social media better, but also in the rest of their life, right? So like the idea is like I actually really do like making things, and I'd like them to be more my own. I've always wanted them to be more me, but that would actually take like some amount of resources. I can't do that off of nothing like that. I mean, then it would be, if I tried to even simulate some of the things that I would have to outsource or like ask or, you know, get help or at least pay, or at least buy, you know, like buying even like props or something.
Yeah, I hear what you mean. By the way, about things like filming dance, I heard from a creator that the algorithm doesn't show things that aren't a creator's main thing. Like since you've made so much autism content, if you like film yourself dancing, that may not get
I mean, of course it won't, because it wants you to be on the platform for as long as possible so that advertising gets pushed. That's the incentive.
Yeah. I was just typing a waxing too in the chat on
Hello, Waxing.
Yeah, Waxing was saying like the problem with using social media for income is that doing so depends on you making what others want. That's a completely different kind of art than expression for expression's sake. Yeah, and the tricky thing is like
to borrow from just quickly, to borrow from the terminology of the book, you are bound to the desires of the general peer, the average person for your audience. And if you push further from that, you might push away the audience. That's
let me
what you
tell
have to
you the
accept.
confusing feedback I've gotten because I'm a musician. I haven't been putting out a lot of music right now, but I'm, whatever. I've done that whole thing and it went really well, and everybody would go out of their way to tell me, like, you're what the world needs. We need to hear from you. You would do so well. You would do great on this. You would do great on that. So I get that this feedback where people are like, oh, you should be popular because you're different in a way that we really appreciated. I'm like, okay, I will try that. And it's been, if I'm really honest, a big old pile of shit. And I've met really cool people, and I've gotten to work on my ideas up to a point, but then they get capped, and I have to worry with the internet being kind of fucked up anyway, which I understand. Like the algorithms and the user interface itself doesn't lend itself to me inviting people into my little universe in my head. But I'm not sure what to do when everyone's not everyone. Let me start this over. I still get that feedback, and I'm still like, well, why would so many people have said that to me if it wasn't possible? Like, why would, and maybe it's not possible and they wish it was possible. Maybe that's their escapist fantasy or something, and they don't really understand
Well,
that.
they wish it was possible because if it happened, it creates a social validation feedback loop. Because if they were like an early supporter, for example, when you were small, right? It's kind of like they are the first to ride like the wave. They're hoping for like a crest of like, a new musician perhaps coming along. And so those first few people obviously would have been maybe very like, because obviously when you start out, right, you don't get like an audience of like millions of people, but just like the first few people who find you and then decide to stay because they find the music interesting. So it's those like dedicated general peers. They obviously see something in your music that they enjoy. And then they say that because they want to hear you produce more of it. Again, it's the validation feedback loop, the way that
Yeah,
I see it.
I think waxing
It's
is
also
also right, but go ahead.
it's also like doing well is subjective. There are a lot of creators where it's not their only income stream, but like it's a way to find people to bring into your universe elsewhere, like lead them to this Discord, or if you wanted to put things elsewhere, if you wanted to have classes, things, one-on-one coaching, things like that. And I know like that is a lot to ask. And like I really wish like one of those things was enough. And it's very like fucked up that that's not the case. But the fact that you're reaching even a few people is already making an impact. And also a lot of with content creation, it also just takes time. Like now I know I'm not an expert on this, but I know a lot of people like who didn't do things like super innovatively or like better than everyone else, but just like stuck with it for 5 years and ended up with millions of followers.
I think whether it takes a lot of time or not is down to, are you truly invested in whatever you're curating for your profile?
Well, that's
No?
okay.
Well, I think Jane is.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I'm trying to do it is a little different because I really feel like there's a world inside of my mind, and I've been kind of taking care of it and refining it, but I was born with it. Like it came so early, I don't know where it came from. And I'm like, oh, well, this is a good thing for the internet. Like this is good. Like how else could I easily and in multiple ways show you the world in my mind? That's why I have to do different kinds of things. Because the world in my mind is an entire world. It's not a product. It's not a store. I don't have a store in my mind. I have a world in my mind. So then this is really attractive to me that I could try to do something online, but it's maybe what Waxing is saying is like it's a fantasy, and maybe the world, maybe people want a world where you could do that. And maybe there's a way that I can still get there. Like I there's a couple more contacts I could reach out to see if some of my harebrained plans might work, and I'll keep doing that. I'll keep reaching out. But it is very sad for me that I've gotten feedback that says like, we do want you to get to do what you want. I'm like, great, okay, cool. I want it to get to people who care deeply about it. It's not that I want to be around a lot of people. I've especially learned that because now I know that a lot of people have beliefs that I can't even start to unpack for them. Like it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that like what I wanted to do was to encourage other people to work on their world in their head and to have a way to show ways you can share the world in your head. And that's the project of my life. So I was kind of excited because I'm like, oh, just like my role models, like Fred Rogers and now I'm blanking because I'm so burnt out. Wow, this is bad. Jim Henson.
Guy Fieri.
Well, Jim Henson and Fred Rogers, they came into television right when it was really getting to be in everyone's home. And they're like, oh, what an incredible way to share this incredible thing that I'm able to understand and build the world about. So like Fred Rogers was teaching like important psychological developmental like skills and reference points for people to come back to throughout their childhood and adulthood. And Henson was showing how to create these like creatures that inhabit a real believable place because you're seeing them as if they're there. So I was like, oh great, okay, well now we have the internet, I'll be like my heroes, I'll figure out how to do that. And this technology is very different than television was. Like it's very mystical, like people don't really know how it works. And then I got a lot of advice where people wanted it to work for me. And I am extremely confused because it's not, but you know who it is working for? Psychopaths? Like it's working great for psychopaths.
I hear what you mean. Yeah, I have thoughts on that. I actually started I wrote like the outline for a blog recently, and I can read what I got. Yeah, it's titled "The Degradation of What It Means to Be an Expert." Yeah, and so far I got, we can blame the popularity of short form content, vague buzzwords, or deceptive creators. But I hypothesize that these trends are symptoms of a larger problem. The demand spawning this supply. Too much information and expectations for what we need to know, and not enough time. And then I was gonna link a video my friend Sam Keating shared about how like there's less interdisciplinary collaboration now because all the fields have gotten too big for people to understand more than a tiny sliver, not do the circling thing you're talking about. And many of the interdisciplinary folks I have met sound more like VCs, throwing their money and attention at things they don't understand rather than researchers, but they don't seem to recognize this. They think they're thorougher than they are. Versus I see folks trying to be thorough, getting overwhelmed by both how much info there is and interactions with higher ups, like bosses, people funding them, whoever, who dismiss their efforts to fill the gaps. Meanwhile, the social conventions around hiring, job function delineation, and networking have not updated to match the narrowing scope of expertise. TikTok bios are still really short and don't make it easy to narrow, like, come here if you want this, but not if you want to understand, how to make autism your superpower to take over the world. Our economy is running on people doing work outside their purview. This is increased by recent layoffs and combining of roles.
No, it is run on, yes. And the people who are influencers online, a lot of times are either like extremely dedicated artists that just do one thing, or extremely dedicated, I don't know, like anything technical, and they do one fucking thing, man. Or they're these people that are doing things that are not their expertise.
Yes. I really feel that. Yeah, I feel like I am an interdisciplinary person by nature. Yeah, world in my head that I'm trying to understand. I have another blog idea about like why I need to dabble for lifelong learning. And yeah, I'm like, okay, so I'm never gonna be probably defining, you know, how music is made. Like, I'll probably never be cutting it because my attention is split. Okay, maybe I can normalize and de-shame having attention be split. But I also am passionate about other things, like learning what it means to learn. What is critical thinking? Like, I hear you. I explore one thing, and then all of a sudden I'm getting recommendations to read a book on identity. Like, okay, maybe I can review that. But if the algorithm is not going to be able to, like, I feel like it used to be more around who you are. Like, okay, like if you get enough of a following, like people will get shared all your content. But now they're like recognizing, oh, people like this kind of content from this person, and then like when you branch out into other things now, like I originally saw it as a positive, because if people have like a couple main things, you know, like there's politics and there's art or something, then like if they'd gotten in before the algorithm started doing this, then like okay, they can kind of have people who follow just their art getting just their art, people who follow their politics getting just their politics. But to start now, it's like you got it, or like what I've seen work is people getting big by doing one thing, and it's often like the junk food stuff. And then they're trying to like share their thoughts on the field or something, and no one gets, like the algorithm just doesn't send anyone that video.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I feel that. And then like the people who do get to do many things, I find that a lot of them their followers are this cult of people who don't understand what it means to understand something.
Yeah.
And they want to take over the world. They want to be able to do whatever they want without putting in the hard work. And they're like, see, this influencer got to do it and I will too. Versus like people who actually want to, you know, like bring disability awareness into the arts or something and do it seriously. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is really hard. And like the people who are looking for it get discouraged looking on these platforms because the people making that content get discouraged being on those platforms. I do find that Discord and like communities in general. Now, I don't want to say you will be able to make a living doing this, because I see a lot of people trying and failing. But you do have like a good sized group of people coming back here. And this is like a cause I'd be willing to donate to. Like you've put in so much work. You know, like I'm paying for ChatGPT and Perplexity. Like I don't have a ton of money, but like a $10 subscription, okay, that's like a couple nice coffee. You know, like I'm not gonna like starve if I make that donation, and like someone who would can just not donate.
Right. Well, and I actually had to go look up while you're while you're saying that, while I'm thinking about it, and Waxing brought up that like Jim Henson and Mr. Rogers, it took both of them at least 15 years. And if depending on how you want to define success for them, like where they were like recognized and had their shows and everything, 15 to 20 for Henson, and then 15 to 17. Like Mr. Rogers, from when he first started in TV, it took 17 years to start doing Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood like that. So I don't know. I mean, it is helpful to think of it that way, because people don't think of I'm trying to think of the right way to put this. Like what I'm trying to do is a lot bigger than the bio thing, or that like I'm not a businesswoman. You know what I mean? Like everybody online is a freaking business person. I'm not a business person. So I'm not making a business. I'm not making a brand. I'm trying to find a way to live that is nurturing for people with a different kind of brain, and can somehow be modular enough to still slot into our current society and sustain itself. So I'm trying to do that. And it's weird because I don't have a role model in that, but that's the point. Like I'm trying to be the role model in that. And I'm at the same time I'm a woman, so there's all like when people first were telling me to go online, they would say stuff about how pretty my eyes are, like, oh, you should be online because your eyes are so pretty, your eyes are so captivating, your eyes are just like all this shit. I'm like, well, that's stupid. Nobody was telling Mr. Rogers that he had beautiful eyes and that's why he should be doing a show. But that's, you know, it's part of it. So I'm trying to take this all apart and deconstruct all of this because it's super confusing. Because like for me, it's simple. It's like world in head, put outside. World in head, put outside. Like I was like, what a great idea. And then when I get to the world outside, they're like, well, what does that even? What does that mean? Is it a product? Who is it? Who does that being sold to? Who's gonna buy it? I'm like, what the fuck do you mean buy it? I didn't buy it. You can't buy it.
Right.
So what's the main point of consternation then? That people don't understand, right?
Yeah, people don't understand. I don't know if I what to do. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or not, and I'm burning out because of.
I don't know if
Oh, go ahead.
know if there is a right or wrong thing, but I mean, it's just you've got the reality of you know, capitalism and nice capitalism and consumerism, right?
Yeah.
And so these two are going to be big influences. And then online with the algorithms, and I'm not on TikTok or whatever, but I would imagine that what sort of picks up traction is whatever is seen as the average of the most interesting and viral material that is there at the moment. So like if you really needed to try to get your material to be seen by more people, right? It's taking the material that you're doing and then trying to transmit it in such a way where if you can find the pulse of what's currently kind of like the mainstream of what
I don't think
people
I can do that.
and
I've given up on that.
well, that's the reality,
right there, yeah.
unfortunately, of how the system works.
I know, but I don't. I literally think because I'll try to do that, and those posts don't do very well at all. And it's like, well, like you know, like the post that I just did.
I mean, yeah, because only one person tends to get viral, right? And then imitators that kind of come in at the same time, they don't get all those views, right? Because we live in a hierarchical system where it's like one person or one entity hogs all of the stuff, right?
I hear yeah, everything you're saying, Jane. And so if the algorithm is the problem, I am thinking about ways for you to get around the algorithm. One, like I don't feel like you've wasted, you know, that much time and energy in the grand scheme of things. Like you have learned a lot. I've noticed like the way you articulate things has gotten easier to follow in the last couple months. And I would guess that the content creation has contributed to that.
Probably.
And like if the algorithm isn't working for you, then people recommending your stuff might. You know, like shareable things, like sharing them in here. And like we can share your content on different platforms that we're on, or even just share links to this directly. And you're getting a lot of experience. Like you're in, you know, you're working at a school teaching disabled people. Yeah. You're contributing to disability arts orgs. Like there's so much learning there. Mm-hmm. And if you like burn out trying to figure out the algorithm on top of it, like, okay, if you need more money now, content creation isn't going to do it.
Right.
Like it takes people years to get money off of content. And I know like I'm in the same place because I'm like, but who's going to give me money? Maybe I should do I wish I started doing it 5 years
right
ago, you know.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we can make content, not let that like consume us to the point of burnout and to the point of not being able to be as present with the opportunities we do have, because like you're already doing a lot, learning a lot, contributing to some very complex environments. Like I burnt out trying to do the kind of stuff you are succeeding at doing. Mm-hmm. Like I found it to be just so complex, like the kind of people who come in. Okay, so what this is telling me is like you are able to contribute to people who want to learn without burning out. And it's the trying to, at least as far as we know, maybe there may be summer there as well, but the thing that you're noticing is that it's trying to cut through the noise to be noticed in the public sphere that is burning you out. And I hope that that doesn't put you out of commission to where you lose the ability to be in these spaces where you are changing people's lives and getting money.
Mm-hmm.
And like you're learning so much through that. Honestly, like I'm over here like I wish instead of content trying to get everyone in the world to recognize sociopaths, I wish Jane would make more content about what it's like teaching disabled people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like what are the people who are already on board? What kind of stuff are they like dying to hear from you? What brings people back every week despite having no idea what's going to be talked about or what the vibe's going to be or who's going to be here? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting. I want okay, hold on. My brain is taking in.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I can't stop processing the how to explain this. Okay, this is so difficult. This is only difficult because our society doesn't have very good words for this. But so basically there's a field in my mind of points that have possible relationships that I know they have where they face other points and then it creates a dynamic between them and that creates all kinds of stuff. Like you basically need at least two things to make any sort of recipe, right? So I have a constellation of not only recipes that I know have happened, but also ones that I think might be there, and I'm trying to figure out if those relationships are there. So, like, I'm still thinking about like the sociopath problem while I'm at my job because it's relevant to their lives too, right? So then it's so difficult to collapse any of this down. It has to stay three-dimensional, and that's the problem I'm having with how the internet is developed. Everything needs to be flattened to slot through the slot, right? Like everything has to be packaged in a very skinny envelope that's going to slide in the correct slot. And I think that's why I'm not working, right? Like if I don't collapse down, I'm just jamming against the little mail slot or whatever. That's the best way that I've ever thought of it, to be honest. Maybe because my husband's working for the USPS now, but yeah.
I understand all that. And I would be curious, what, like, are you seeing any issues that your students are clearly running in? Okay, like let me think of how to phrase this. So when you're thinking about how systemic stuff influences your students, is it because of challenges that your students have voiced and or that you're visibly seeing them running into? Or is it more you hear about the systemic thing and then you question whether it may be impacting your students?
So I know it's impacting them. It is the systemic thing that I've been keeping tabs on for a while because I've been working on that before people were talking about these different topics. So sometimes I even I'll push back on people's language because I'm like, I don't think that's the right way to go with the theory, right? Because I've already been working on my own version of it. So I see the students and I go, oh, you haven't been exposed to the skill acquisition necessary. Why not? Oh, what happened? Oh, they don't understand the skill. So then who's trying to teach people this skill that's not actually properly broken down and therefore understood? Like in order for me to teach, I'm breaking down what movements really are and why people cannot teach it to this group of people, or why people haven't worked with this characteristic that this person has more successfully, because I know it's a component of learning skill. So what I see is like that the sieve or like the colander or something that people are pouring themselves through has little holes that are only a certain shape. And if yeah. So I'm observing the behavior of the students, and I know that the system is depriving them of opportunities to develop their approach to the skill.
That makes a lot of sense. I would love to, for your sake, help you flesh out how you communicate this more. And for my sake, I would love to hear more about this, because this is something that I'm thinking of a lot too. Like one idea that I had was, maybe help, like consulting, coaching, helping neurodivergent people use AI and other tech tools as a personal assistant. I feel more confident about the, just how to break down day-to-day tasks, but I also find it super helpful for learning, like as you described, and that's something that I want to keep thinking about in the back of my mind, like where can it be helpful there? And also like in terms of quote unquote branding, like what am I more knowledgeable about than these gurus who have all these trophies, who people are more likely to follow if they only care about doing as arriving.
Right.
And so I've been thinking a lot about this as well. Like when people don't recognize that they don't understand what a skill entails. The vast majority of people just don't understand that in society. And I would love to have more conversations about this here.
We can do that.
Without you needing to burn out trying to like educate people on TikTok. Because like, and until you like once you get to the kind of language that you've been able to use for the doing as arriving video, like that's really easy to share with people. Versus, like stuff like this I could see get misunderstood a bunch of ways. But I would love to talk through like specific examples of what your students are running into and break it down there. And really like go on this deep dive of what does it mean to learn and know stuff, and where is it breaking down? Because I find that when we like share the high level theories about systemic issues that we're seeing, people are either like, yeah, you're right, but then they don't know what to do after that. Or most people are like, okay, interesting, maybe, no idea. Again, don't know what to do with that. Like, people want things packaged on a silver platter for them to be actionable. And to get there, we can put the high level stuff out there and see who bites. But that's like a small fraction of the people in the world who we can help. Like, like you have students coming to you, but they don't know what they don't know about this. So I think like dissecting this more, maybe using what your students are running into as examples and like coming up with our own lived experience knowledge. Like sometimes that can also help with coming up with answers to the systemic stuff and what do we believe and not believe, versus like having to sort through a bunch of psychopath language.
Well, that's okay. So that's interesting when you say that. So okay, if I start to so the facing thing is part of my current model. So facing, not faces. It's the idea that like the universe we live in, it doesn't have vertices. Those are imaginary. Those are like the pretense of the relationship between points that face each other. That's them looking at each other basically. And faces are not real because there is no physical plane of a face. Every physical plane you're on is a collection of points that have a direction that they face. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. And then that's like physics stuff. But the point of me saying that is when you were talking, you said one thing and another thing. I'm like, what happens if I make them face each other? Because I can kind of like do that in my head, and then I put myself in the role of one or the other of them, like even if they're just abstract ideas. So the two abstract ideas in this case, it was like, okay, so my students at the college are not able to learn a skill because it wasn't broken down properly, and their aptitudes weren't broken down properly, so there couldn't be a fit, right? So if that's the problem with my students, and they were taught by neurotypicals, which they were, and they've been interfacing with neurotypicals, do neurotypicals not know how to teach that, and that's why they're not learning either? Because if I'm being honest, that what you said just now is like the neurotypicals will be like, oh, that's really cool, I don't know what to do. I'm like, why don't they know what to do? I only don't know what to do because they're all like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, you
Right.
you go together in a room and you talk about what to do until you do it.
Except people can talk for 12 hours, and if none of them know what is getting closer to knowing what to do versus what's going off in a spiral, like that's something that I struggle with. And I also find that like I know like the way you're using neurotypical is more like to mean like the normative culture, like neuronormative.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am questioning how much is this about the type of brain versus like the way knowledge is being taught, like education systems in general, like there are systemic issues like just underfunding, which are getting progressively worse. And then there's also a lot of the kind of knowledge today. So back in the day, society used to be a lot more like everything was tied to the real world, like getting food, building shelter. And then there was art and, artisans, like still practical trades like that. And now it's like with tech, so much more BS can go under the radar because like building a physical product, someone could be, or, doing a physical dance, what have you. Someone could be like, I'm the best dancer ever. Like they could be really cocky. And then you watch them dance and everyone's going to laugh. So that would kind of take care of itself. Like it's okay if that person doesn't have high emotional intelligence. Like society will give them a choice to either learn or continue to be laughed at. Versus now, code can be really buggy, but as long as the interface looks good, your, team lead will sign off on it and it will no longer be your problem. Same with like content creation. You say something convincingly enough to get a bunch of likes, and if it causes people to have mental health issues down the road, it's no longer your problem. And the people who are running education systems, even if they are for more practical things, the people in those leadership positions are often types who, do things outside their purview, as opposed to the types who are like busy getting really, really good at a skill and then wanting to teach that, are put under the people who make a living talking about and making decisions about things they don't understand.
Right.
Right. So
well,
there may be more things going on here too.
That's sort of okay. Maybe it's actually helping me a lot, by the way. So thank you. But one thing that came up with my exploration with my GPT that I've been working with is like some people they just want to answer so they can keep moving.
Yep.
But what we want to do is stop so we can ask questions. So they're like, well, the question person, they're stopped and asking questions because they're confused. I'm like, no, you don't know what. It's not because I'm confused. It's because nobody knows the answer, and that's really bad if you guys are just going to run, 8,000 miles an hour towards a brick wall. Yeah. Like, where are you going? So that's maybe the skill that I'm trying to teach people ultimately, like universally, and that might be the problem as well for me, and why because that's sort of fixable. Like if it's as simple as like people will model, or the attitudes are caught not taught thing, they will mirror if you're like, oh, I have questions and I also care. right? They're like, oh, you stopped because you care? Amazing. You're like, yeah, I also stopped because I have some questions. Like, oh, you care and have questions? Great. What a nice feeling this is.
Yeah. Yeah, I really feel that needs to be modeled. And that is a great title for, you know, a video, a course, anything. I forget what exactly it was you said, but it like something about, you know, how to stop to ask questions, you know, because you can't, like, there's obviously better ways to phrase this than what I'm doing. But I find that like when you are locked into a specific problem you're seeing in the world and understanding that, it leads to things that are easier to follow than when you're pulling together all of these theories where the words, like, this goes into a video, I think it was you, Bright Spear, who shared like a YouTube video about political content using words without defining them and with using them in 15 different ways. Correct. So if we're like trying to piece together these systemic theories which are being talked about like that, it can get very confusing. You know, 75% of the data is bad. That can be
exactly
like
my thought running for your conversation, which is that like nobody's got running definitions for things, and that there's not a consensus, right? It's not like in a scientific field where there's like hard set ideas about what things are. Now you can obviously have discussions, debates, and arguments as to what constitutes, right, anything that is defined, but at the same time, those things are not being done. And then I guess in something like neurodivergence, though it's not a field, but I guess in sort of like psychology, right, where the subset might be about stuff to do with neurodivergence, it seems to me like a lot of people, or rather there's ideas thrown by people online and buzzwords, right? Similar to like what people think like a narcissist is, for example, narcissism, without having read any of the clinical literature, right, in the various studies. Because then even then there's like contested ideas for what an accurate for that is. So
well,
yeah.
Some of that too, okay, the way that I translate that into my model is people will give you words and they'll come off like, again, instructions for where to go or directions. So they'll stop, they'll get the word, they'll go. And I'm like, wait, where are you going? Where are you? That word can mean 8 things. Which field are you going to? And they don't clarify it because I don't think they wanted to stop in the first place. And this is my concern about even something like, I wouldn't want to be in the genre or the, let me say, territory.
So I think the reason that it happens is because they obviously just simply want a definition that is convenient, right? That doesn't have negative consequences for them. And so like they stop at that.
Yeah, no, they want to pick the right one, so then when they hear it again, they'll know to go left or right. They'll know to, you see what I'm saying? Like, is it a good or a bad? Is it an up or down?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah,
convenience.
Yeah. Well, it's also it's a performance that they're planning to do again in the future. So they're memorizing performance behaviors, not meaning making. They're not trying to make sure that it's meaningful. They're trying to make sure that the next time they're tested on this, they'll color in the right bubble, and that's it's like a really weird multiple choice test that leads to hell. And like, and what I was saying, like, I wouldn't want to be in.
But it's like,
go ahead.
You're seeing things that are meaningful to you, which somebody necessarily might not feel is meaningful to them.
Well, but it's not. I'm going to argue that's a liberty with the word meaningful. So I'll clarify my term right there. I mean meaningful as in like it has meaning, like it meaning itself, like it's like epistemically important. And so if something's epistemically valuable or sound, that's what I mean by meaningful. For meaningful to them is just emotionally salient. That's not meaningful. If it makes you feel good, so does drugs. That doesn't mean the drugs are meaningful. If you want to know why the person is high off of this drug or that, then you're going into the brain. That's where the actual meaning is of the or you know, and the nervous system. Right. So
but as you said, people don't care about that.
Right. Well, then they've potentially cheapened and split the word meaningful itself, which makes sense that they have if they're this stuck. So what they've told themselves is that this is sufficient to tell people it's meaningful because they'll leave me alone. when meaningful is supposed to be like, oh, you're on to something that has a deeper a set of information that will help other things. Like you're understanding the mechanics of something, or you're understanding the
right.
underlying
There's
structure.
There's an element of fear there, because obviously they might sense that there might be a deeper layer to anything that they might be looking at, and so they might not want to go further into that, because it may then put into question some existing structures that they live in, and so they fear for the consequences.
Well, and they're
right?
not good at it. That's my argument is
Mhm.
this is my argument of doing as arrive and doing as building, why it's a problem. If you just do as arrive and you don't do as build, you get worse. You atrophy the skill of being able to recursively find meaning or look for recursive forms of meaning, where this meaning helps me to understand what is meaningful, what contains complexity, right? It allows me to cope with complexity and then to model that complexity with relative accuracy to the world that I actually live in. That's what meaning is. What they are saying is like, I feel threatened, I want to stop feeling threatened. I'm like, well, that's more of a fear of death. That's a different skill. I'm not saying you shouldn't have doing as arriving and be able to run away. You should. But if that's all you do, the other thing is not going to happen. You're going to get confused what these signals mean in your body. And even if you are under threat anymore, and people will put themselves in a threat state just to feel that it's quote unquote meaningful. But it's a meaningless threat state. There is no reason to feel threatened besides for that you've learned to activate this state in order to regulate yourself. So they're creating the triangle, right? They're creating a villain so that they can have a hero be the hero, either be the victim or the rescued. So that's what they're doing. That's what my theory is saying. That's why it keeps going back to that. So just to argue this and close it up, if they want to feel a kind of way that they've learned to feel, and they can either weaponize or instrumentalize is the better word, two people or two ideas to then allow them to feel that they're a victim that's going to be rescued by a hero, or a hero that needs no rescuing. That is what they are doing to meaningful information, stripping it and devoid of meaning to them, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's my problem.
I think people make decisions, the way that I see it at least, based on the conditions around what those conditions allow. And so the vast majority of people, in the US especially, it's like, they are doing things, especially not to lose, for example, employment, right? There's like very strong dominance hierarchies across different sectors, but especially with like employment, because obviously you need money to be able to eat and survive. And so I think it's inculcated and baked into the bones of everything, because like the idea of even like actually from that channel, by the way, like Tara, like politics, right? It goes down to private politics, which includes employment, which includes family life and all kind of private sectors, so to speak, right? The idea with that one is that there's still a hierarchy of who has like a higher position and is able then to exploit those in a lower position. And what comes with that is the ones who want to keep those hierarchies working have a vested interest for people not to ask questions, not to look too deeply into the complex meanings of things, right? Not to care about any epistemological autopoietic way about stuff, because as far as they're concerned, they want to keep things simple, so that the system continues in the shape that it is, and they can get as many things as possible. And then for the people who are like in the middle, right, and not at the top, for a lot of them, they have not grown up with a lot of those privileges. And then they get fed a lot of propaganda and narratives of like, oh, you can get this as well, right? You deserve this. Oh, these people are the reason for why you didn't have it. So they don't think too much about it, don't look to the causes, and sort of like just followed orders.
Well, and
I think that's it.
Yeah, well, they are following orders. That's my issue with it. So for example, I was going to say I wouldn't want to be in the genre of like somebody making a course, right? I would never want to do that, because I know the type of people that make those generally can get to be quite doing as arriving. I just think and also the structure. So what course would I teach? I'm like, okay, let's see. How to ask questions. Find a person. Ask, what is this thing? And then you ask, do I think I know what it is yet? After you've asked the person questions. And then, does the person I asked think I know what it is yet? And then why or why not? And then just do that over and over again. Like, see how simple it is? Because it's like, you can't practice that in advance. You have to just ask people. You have to, like, the hardest part is like, find person, get up the nerve to ask person. Like, yeah, that part can be a big problem. That can be like a structural problem, right? That can be a disability problem.
Yep.
But if you can find person and ask person, then the question part you can't practice in advance because you don't know what they're going to say.
I have kind of a mixed opinion there, where so it is a step up, like for people who have a history of being shut down and looked at weird and not invited to the next party when they asked questions. Having space to ask questions and get a Jane response.
Wait, how do you know that you weren't invited because you didn't ask questions? That kind of is interesting.
Because I did. I mean, like,
did they say that? Did they say that directly to you? You asked too many questions.
No, they didn't say it directly. I'm just saying, like, as if someone like myself used to ask a lot of questions and then got dirty looks, and then there was this party that I felt like I enjoyed, and then I didn't get invited back again. And then I replay it, and I'm like, oh, everyone walked away after I asked 3 questions in a row.
Right.
And didn't talk to me for the rest of the party. I know, like, there's no way to vet whether that's accurate because those people are not willing to answer more questions.
Well, I also don't think I don't think they know how. I don't think they ask questions, so they have no idea what that's supposed to look like. So when you start to do it, they probably just feel embarrassed, honestly.
Well, they don't understand it. As you said, it's a skill that they might not understand. They've not learned.
Right.
It's not being taught.
It depends. So I do find that, like, when I call myself a UX researcher, like, they're like, oh, okay, she's a professional question asker. I don't have to be on her level. And like, sometimes they're more grateful that way. But I do understand, if you're like just a 20-something looking woman walking into a space and your bio says musician and dancer, people may or they might assume you're talking about autism all the time just because that's like in your bio.
Right.
So that's interesting to know. I do think that there is value in having a space where question asking is modeled, even if it's not the same questions. And then people can go out into the world, try their question asking, get responses, and then come back to your group and like share, and we can analyze together. So maybe it's not like a set curriculum, but it could still be like, pay this amount of money, sliding scale for access to this group for 2 months. Matthew, the coach I introduced you to, so he has like a set curriculum for people who are like just learning they're autistic, or like people who, learned inaccurate info and like want to learn accurate info like me. And then he has like, for people who've already done that and have that shared vocabulary, there's like a, every month to 2 months, like 5 to 8 weeks, depending what you choose, you can just like be part of a group, share topics you want to talk about, and like updates every week. And like, that is what the collective learning is about. So that is a thing in the world. And like, doing the work to facilitate that, like, society, like, I feel that a lot of people are not able to hold that space because they're not able to charge for it, because we have a culture of not charging for it, because we have a culture that dilutes what it means. Versus in Chinese culture, there's like Dr. Nancy Lee's class for people who want to become product managers, which is very doing as arriving. but she does approach it with more building than a lot of the gurus out there. And like there is a lot of community aspect of people coming with their questions they're running into throughout their interview process and helping each other out. And she's like facilitating this and saying, okay, like go to this part of, she's built this map of all these resources. And she's like, check that out for this problem that you're running into. Versus a lot of similar programs by Western folks are a ripoff because they're just piecing together what's in front of them and saying this is a curriculum, but it's not tied to what do people need. And it's not holding space for what is their exact challenge that week. And I feel that, okay, what do we want to model in the world for ways for people to like bring their inner world to life? I think like spaces to be in community with your inner world that is not just like at a bar shooting the shit. Like, I think that is something worth like it's not just hanging out. Like, I know like we can't charge people to hang out with us, but I do think there's like this in between. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. And that's another story. Go on. Sorry.
Oh, what did you say? I missed.
No, it's just in Japan you can hire people to do that. But that's
oh yeah, that is true. But I feel there's this in between category where it's not this top down prescriptive teaching, but it's more helping people with developing their descriptive understanding of the world and integrating it, which is.
But again, I want to ask, right? I got a question. What do you mean by like, what do you want to get out when you say you want to share your inner world, right? What is that about?
So that's. Go ahead.
Wait. Okay, now wait. Huh? Wait. Who are we asking?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
I was asking Tara.
Okay, good. I'm waiting.
Okay. So I used those words because Jane used them. And I figured
what does Jane mean then?
So
yeah.
There's kind of like a why more than a what. So there just is one, right? And it's in my mind there are behaviors between concepts, and they invent a completely different infrastructure that's outside of the imagination of my culture. So it's like I have an alternate reality in my head. Okay, so
you're almost describing what researchers do and people in various fields, not in academia, but specifically scholarship and scholars.
Yeah. That's, and I probably would have done okay as something like that, but this is just how I'm expressing it. So I have that, and I want to share with people because more of the why reason. It clearly has benefited me, and the things that I imagine as possible would be really good for other people to consider. I would like them to consider the things that can exist inside of my mind, and if they would like them to exist in the real world. So that is why.
Right. I mean,
yeah, I really like this sharing the why rather than imposing the what. Because what can be indoctrination, and you're never going to be 100% right. But if you can help people develop their own process, then like when they find a place where you're wrong, like they can move forward and like figure out what they want to do instead of being like, throw out the whole thing.
No, like, you know, exactly. Because the whole.
So in that case,
go ahead. Well, let me add one thing. I'm working off of a set of information that may be incomplete or may have a distortion. I've tried to be conscientious about it, but it's impossible to be perfect at that. So if I say something and you know that the intention was to still be a solid builder of this universe that you can see when you're tilting the lens a little bit diagonally, that most people can't see because they're just not getting that reflection and resonance when they look at it dead on. So if you think of it that way, I'm trying to look accurately, but I could still have inaccuracies. So, but that doesn't mean that the whole thing is inaccurate, especially when it's new and I don't have a lot of people to confirm my observations with.
But also a wrong answer isn't a meaningless one either.
That too, no, exactly. A wrong answer also lets you know about the rules of the universe. Like if it's wrong in this universe, why? Right? Like there's reasons why something doesn't work as much as it does.
And the thing about, like, if you've got a model running, and even if you perfect it, which is, well, I guess you can in your lifetime, and obviously, like, you know, some researchers and scientists in the past have, like, stuck stubbornly to, like, one theory, even though there were, like, counter theories and, like, mounting evidence that it was wrong, but they still stick to it. Because I think, like, some people get too tied up to this idea of needing to perfect something that they're working on. But whether it exists or not, I think the reality is, like, I'm reminded of that quote from, I think, Arcane or whatever, right? There's no price to perfection except for an end pursuit. So obviously you don't kind of want to go too hard in trying to prove it, right? The point that I was going to say earlier, Jane, is just like, well, so then if this is what you want to do, which is what you're doing, right? If you're doing this through the work in person and the things that you're saying to people that you meet face to face, and then you post some of the stuff online as well, regardless of how much traction it gets and who listens or doesn't listen to it, as long as you pass that, like, proverbial torch to at least one other person or influence in front of you, then that's it. That's all you need, in theory, no?
Right. Well, no, in theory, because then, like, if I'm teaching them how to interact with me, and if they can interact with me, then the things that I produce would naturally have a place to go. If people don't interact with doing as building, I have a problem. And I was explaining this conflict with Sandcastle about to Hip Hop for Change for this program I'm developing, and it made it easier for them to understand why it's different. So it's like, well, we're not going to measure them by running across the beach to an arrival finish line. We have to keep them building the sandcastle. Like, they build sandcastles, they don't run to finish lines. So our neurodivergent program needs to be that way. And it's like, just trust me on this. I'm a crazy person who can understand it. So, but he liked that, and he's a neurotypical person. Okay, so even like the art of asking questions. The thing is that if I don't ask the question to get a doing as arriving answer. I ask the question to get an if-then scenario from the person that knows different things than me. And also to invite me to give my if-then scenario. So even when I sound like I might be saying, like, well, it's definitively this, this is what I think is most probabilistically true based on a series of if-then environmental, like, interactions I've had. Like, if this is true, then does this happen?
It's a form of, like, intellectual play, or rather you're kind of like doing this sort of cognitive tennis, and you want the other person to pass back the ball.
Right, exactly. And I want us to play together, and that allows me.
But the person has to be able to see. One, they have to have arms. They got to have vision to see the ball coming at you. They have to know the rules, and they have to want to play the game.
Well, they have to face me. I would argue that there may be some people that don't know how to do this, but
they have to want to play with you.
Yeah.
They also have to want to play with you.
Yeah, they have to want exactly. Well, and they have to stop. They have to care. They have to do this kind of questioning specifically. And the caring for me is the facing. Like, if you face something even in your mind, you kind of are acting like it's dead in front of you, like it's in eyesight. So we have these behaviors that are almost poetic in how common they are. Like, this is just like something we do all the time. It's almost like it's so maybe not intuitive, but it's so obvious we don't bother saying it. That, like, oh yeah, well, of course I'm facing the thing. So when you face to go somewhere and when you face to be with something, it's just a very different thing. And when you question to go somewhere, or when you question to be with a thing, it's a very different thing.
Yep. I agree. I mean, that's kind of what happens during research when you're sitting on something that, like, you've got various things that are piecing together in your mind. You can't quite it hasn't fully come into what's the word? Like, you don't sort of know exactly kind of like what you're piecing together in terms of a theory or model, and that is what sounds to me of what you're saying right now. But
and we have lots of negative language for stopping, like, you don't dwell on it. And then we'll have positive language for going, like, pick yourself up, get on with it.
I mean, yeah, because it was, again, see the structures that we live in and what was conditioned, and obviously a lot of people don't want you to stop and think, because then you might think and stop about the systems that they enforce on everybody else, which
Well,
they say are good.
and the weird thing is, on some level, I think they do want a certain number of people to stop and think, so they can keep pointing at them and being like, "Look at that loser." And that's what I encounter online.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of, they want people to think insofar as they can find new justifications for bad things that they want to push on to other people,
Well,
right? Like you'll have these pseudo-intellectuals that defend terrible things or whatnot.
I don't know if that's, I think the hierarchy thing is so ingrained. I don't know if that's even what they're doing. Like I would maybe, but I would argue in my model, what they're doing is they're trying to make sure enough people are racing with them that if they win, it still matters. Does that make sense? Like if they're just racing with their own shadow and they win, no one's going to give a shit. So they need enough people to race with them that it matters if they win.
Well, I mean, just the race has to happen. There has to be like a winner and lots of losers, right? Like a car race. It's just they need people to participate.
Yeah,
right?
They need people to participate. They need spectators to also be impressed by it. Right? They need all kinds of stuff, but they also want to say that all people who are stopped are losers, and that's why I'm getting fucking burnt out, is because this should be obvious, and now we have the BBB and people running around, if you go too far in the wrong place online, saying like, oh well, that's because these freeloaders are not I was like, what are you talking about? So they don't want anyone to stop because stoppers are losers. And the only way you can ask these sorts of meaningful questions, truly meaningful, not regulating your affect, the only way to ask these meaningful questions is to stop and question in order to stay and be with the thing.
Of course. It's just, I mean, it's just, you know, you're going to have most people, like, you'll obviously see the reality in front of you in terms of, like, if a person is receptive to that or not. Like, I had a case this morning in some ways. So, like, you just mentioned, like, freeloaders, right? Which I'm guessing is in the context of, like, somebody speaking about, like, disabled people, right? Or somebody kind of hogging, maybe, or the way that they would see it, hogging, you know, benefits or something like that. And then that just reminded me that I was at a flea market this morning with a friend of mine who's, like, you know, in his 70s or whatever. And he said about, like, oh, don't leave, like, my phone's really busted up. And he was like, don't leave, like, your phone just sort of, like, out there on the chair in the car, even before the car is locked, right? And I didn't think anybody would break in and steal it. And then he was like, you know, he said, oh, because, like, you know, there's a lot of these, like, foreigners around here, right? And then I didn't kind of, like, I could have, but I didn't sort of, at least at the time, kind of take it further. But that's an example where, hold on a second, right? That's just like an assumption that you make, right? But have you actually sat down and thought about that? Like the likelihoods, what, of somebody who's not from the country or who's a migrant, like, what, stealing more than, like, the average person, right? Like these narratives, these ideas, where they come from, do they question them? Like, does that benefit you to think it that way and stuff like that? So not everybody's going to have these thoughts. That's just the reality of it. The vast majority of people just yeah.
Well, they're not having the thoughts because they aren't setting themselves up to have them. I think that's what's so crucial here.
Yeah, well, yeah, because yeah, you're right. Because I guess in the majority of cases, like like in Tara's situation, maybe one reason possibly of many that they maybe didn't want to invite her back was that somebody will hear questions that you post them, and then they might not say to you, but in their head they're like, this sounds either really pretentious or this makes no sense. I've got an idea of what this is about. And then they just want to be right, because a lot of people don't want to maybe face the humiliation of of being wrong, of having had a wrong model that then recontextualize everything else.
Let me argue something. I think they might even be one step further back. This is where I'm at with it, at least now, that they're not even worried that they're going to say the wrong thing. Just the kind of interaction you're having, the fact that you're asking questions in a certain way that they don't know how to respond to, or they don't understand why, they can tell it's different and alien. So now they're intimidated. Okay, so what if it's just that? Like they're so atrophied at this skill that by the time they interface with somebody doing it, it's like somebody like suddenly being like a champion ballroom dancer, being like, "Do you want to do a couple steps with me?" And you're like, "Ah," like.
I think also just a lot of people are tired and that they are doing their best to sort of carry on their
Well,
you know,
and
meager lives
I
of all of
argue
us.
my argument. So if you recall, my doing as
Yeah.
arriving, doing as building, it's a system of motivation. So my theory is a hypothesis about two systems of motivation that can become somewhat decoupled in the case of neurodivergency and possibly decoupled in the case of psychopathy, and decoupled culturally. And the worst thing to have, I think, is to have it decoupled where doing as building dies and doing as arriving, it becomes hyperpowered. I think doing as building being hyperpowered is not a huge problem to the species. It can be a problem for the individual, no kidding, but it's way better for the species for that to tip in that way is my current thinking. Okay, so if that's true, then the people are motivated by doing as arriving, and they are not practiced at experiencing motivation from doing as building. So they don't feel that question as a source of motivation.
True.
So they've
Thanks for Go ahead, Bright Spear.
No, I agree. No, it makes sense what Jane says. Yeah, they're not motivated, and like they would have to, first off, it's kind of like when you want to build a new habit, for example, right? It's it's like an uphill, the initial first step to change to an alternative motivation source might be quite difficult because you're not getting the same return and the force of habit that's being built.
I'll add, thank you, this is just coming up right now. Here's a consideration. Let's say you come in with the questions, you're highly motivated. These questions are motivating you. And all they do see is that you seem highly motivated. But what's the only form of motivation they've learned? Doing as arriving. So they'll interpret your signals of being motivated as you doing some form of doing arriving thing that they don't understand. So they think that you are trying to compete with them, which is how they're reacting to us. There is evidence of that.
Yeah, that's what maybe people colloquially would call like having an argument. And it's like, it's kind of like when I would ask questions in this doing is building way with my parents, because they would say something and like, this isn't right. They'd always be like, why do you keep trying to be right? Like, what are you trying to argue this point? So I guess that's a very doing is arriving sort of framework that they had.
Why are you doing this?
Winners
is it
and
for
losers.
Arriving? Yeah.
Winners and losers, yeah.
Are you trying to be a winner or are you trying to be a loser? Yeah. Anyways, Tara.
So I am thinking a lot about the fact that people may be intimidated by hearing questioning in ways that they're not used to. So my UX researcher brain is trying to think, are there ways we can frame these questions in a way where it's more clear to them that we're using them to help them, or put a disclaimer before. I don't expect us to come up with answers right away, but that is something that I want to add to my list of questions to keep pondering now. And if anything comes up.
That reminds me of something. So like when you're trying to, like, let's say like, the verbs, right? The video that you saw about like definitions, political ones.
Yeah.
This can apply to anything. I would assume that if you're trying to talk to somebody and communicate or question a specific definition that they have about anything or something that they think they understand, probably the most effective way to go about it is you want to question it in such a way, right? So you want to take them out of that. You have to do it almost with kid gloves in such a way that it doesn't trigger that doing as arriving response, right? And so like that's difficult, I would imagine, right? So that they don't think that you're trying to. You don't want to show any signs that like necessarily like you disagree like outright with what they're saying, what they think about something. So like let's say like they'll say, well, this is dumb, this is how I think this works, and so on and so forth. So I think a good idea then would be like, but what if suppose that this little specific detail was different to what you think, and then you just simply plant one seed and like you let it like germinate almost a little bit in their mind, and then if they come back to you and they seem receptive to continue the conversation on this topic, then that means they'll be open to have that conversation. But if they're not, then I think it's fruitless to try to get somebody to understand, for any reason. So
right, yeah, I like that. I do like where I would most have a question about how to approach that would be the point of letting it germinate. So people often like feel that things need to be addressed right away. And like how to avoid that expectation.
I don't know if I found that in my experience.
Yeah.
Well, it depends, I guess, what you mean, because I've had cases like, I don't know if this is an equivalent example, but like I would say like invite you or somebody and I'd be like, I want to hang out maybe at this time, or I'd like you to check this thing out. And I am not necessarily asking for like an immediate decision or like something to be addressed in that moment. I'm asking somebody to say maybe or that they'll consider it. But often I'll have people saying yes and then they don't follow through. And then I'll see them again. They'll be like, sorry, I didn't kind of like, they have to save face almost. They'll say things like, oh, I didn't read this message or I didn't come back to you. So it's almost like there's a lacking honesty of sorts. Not honesty. This isn't about being dishonest, but it's more.
Yeah. I have seen that a lot. Like trying to get to people, like, to not get into their trying to think about it quick and give the fast response, but like take their time to think on it. Come back if they feel called. Maybe life does get too busy. Maybe they end up having that conversation somewhere else instead of with me, which is totally fine. I don't have bandwidth to follow up on everything with anyone anyway. But like, how to
Oh, it's like Jane said. So I guess it hits me that because Jane was saying, well, if you come in and you're like super excited about the questioning, right? Somebody might see it as like a doing is arriving sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's our only concept of motivation, because they don't know there's a split and one's been atrophied.
So I agree. And so then like I feel like in that case, I don't know, in my life experience, you continue excitedly posing these questions as you see fit. You go to where like your desire takes you in a sense, right? And like if the people who will be interested to hear back, to discuss more, whether they're neurotypical or neurodivergent, it's just, I guess you stick with those people, and then that's, I think, the best you can do, because maybe it's a matter that you can't control. Like it's hard to control perhaps the systemic factors unless we started like doing political action in a more concrete manner. But then we're all doing that little bits here and there. So my point is, maybe like we don't have to try too hard to find like the correct people, like to find like the exact reasons. Like there might not be like an exact set of reasons for why we're lacking, we're lacking the people here to be able to understand the concepts that we're talking about, right? Maybe a lot of people are just not ready to, to face them, as Jane said. That's just how it is.
I have an epiphany. So this is why some things that I don't want to have interactions with doing is arriving, especially men who are programmed in doing is arriving, they're really unpleasant and usually closer to sociopathic, if not actually. So, but I will show up highly motivated to work through and ask questions, and they have no idea what that is except for an invitation to say that I think I'm a winner. And what happens is, because I've battle rap now for like 10 years, people will show up trying to for a while. Like, so people have.
What is that?
Battle rap? You know I do that. Wait, do you?
I know you do rapping. I'm not a music person.
Oh,
I don't know what these words mean.
I freestyle battle rap and beat a bunch of guys all the time.
Wait, like you punch the hell out of them? No. That's
well,
cool.
So what? Kind of like you insult them. Hi, and one guy answers in the chat. Hi, you come up with insults and you like do like 4-bar trade-offs, 8-bar trade-offs, and there's like a huge audience. Well, pretty big, like hundreds of people, and then yeah.
I've watched that one video with like that one rapper. What was his name? Super Hot Fire, and like they were doing digs on each other. So I guess maybe it's that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's that sort of thing. There's a written format which I don't like as much, the culture around it, but the freestyle one I'm in and I'm good at. So I've done that for a while.
Nice.
So okay, so since I've done that for a while, and I did grow up with like playing dozens and stuff, like Yo Mama, blah blah blah, I will talk to someone and they'll be one of those doing as arriving guys, right? I'm like, why are you here? Are you lost? And they must be interpreting my motivation of doing as building as signaling doing as arriving, and they think that they need to now say they're a winner and I'm a loser. But the funny thing is, I wasn't doing that, right? I'm like, no, I'm actually doing this other thing entirely. But by the way, you also are losing. Like, I mean, since you brought it up, here's all the ways I actually am winning. I wasn't even, caring about that. But yeah, like, so that's what's so bizarre for me is then I have to, unpack that a little bit. But that suddenly makes sense.
You know what that reminds me of? What I find bizarre is like, I've got like, this makes sense, right? I've got like a group community project where I paint this big mural currently, right? And why is it that like I'll just paint and I don't ask for it, but people always, like when they come around, some of the staff members, they always got a comment like, it's looking good, this is great. And like sometimes it's just my mood isn't there, and I kind of just wonder, why can they just not stand, right? To just simply. And then ironically, when I feel like I would like some kind of acknowledgement in sort of like that doing his building way, where they actually kind of like look a little bit closer into it. They don't do that. But then often they do these like things of like I said, they just like, oh, this is great, which is maybe like a parallel to when growing up as a kid, I had the opposite of like, you're trash, you're like walking wrong, you're doing this or whatever. So is this like winning and losing script then, basically?
Yeah, and you're triggering it because it's not that hard to at that point, because like that's whenever they see someone extremely like in a high motivational state of some kind, then they interpret like, well, what could that possibly mean? And doing as building is, there's no clue. Like, and I'll even say
they think like you're getting closer to the finishing line.
Yeah, or that you think you are, right? And then they have to tell you you're delusional because they've memorized that you're a loser, right? Because you're weird. So that will come up a lot for someone who's visibly weird, or like who's idiosyncratic or goes against the status quo in some way. Especially if they'll do it to women a lot because we are supposed to be controlled in the status quo, and then you're way out of control. So the meaning thing, though, that's getting back to what you said originally, is they think it's meaningful to them. They are dysregulated, so they think it's meaningful to then try to enter into this competition to say, well, you're not even a competitor, when you weren't doing that at all. They simply needed to feel that this was meaningful to them because their affect is dysregulated, and their affect is dysregulated because this is how they interpret somebody else being motivated. It dysregulates them because they see everyone potentially as a threat in a doing as arriving competition.
Because they see themselves reflected in the quote-unquote stakes of the thing that's happening.
Well, I don't even know.
Like, they want to cheer on if they think they.
I think you're giving them too much credit. I don't know if it's that deep for them. I think what's happening let me argue why, but not to put them down, not to put anyone down. If my theory is correct, it only works because it's so fundamental that it's literally just move your body through space. Yay, I got to the place I wanted to go. Right? So I'm saying that they feel motivation is in another person. They observe motivation behavior in another person. They remember physically, viscerally, affectively that means there's a competition, and that's it. Like they're just in competition mode right away. Not that they know why they are. It's just motivation equals ready to run.
They're relating to what they are seeing, what an experience that they are familiar with the terms that they understand.
Right. I'm arguing that it's so automatic. It's basically a starting gun. So that's what I need to think of it as. So they will always hear my enthusiasm and motivation in doing his building as starting gun, and there's a race, and they don't even know why or what they're just. I don't know. No one's really Pavlovian like that, but that's how like this relationship isn't requiring complexity. Basically, that's what I mean. So we understand how simple the relationship of starting gun and start running, right? So
I guess it's like it doesn't require complexity because perhaps like the way that I see it in my models is that the conditions around them strongly punish exploring any complexity.
Well, because
for the
you'll
things that they
lose the
do.
race though. That's what I'm trying to say. The race
Exactly. If
is
you're
the
paying
reference
attention to
point.
other things.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
so what's happening to them? All motivation is responded to by interpreting the only kind of motivation they understand doing is arriving at this point. They could understand more doing is building, and if they do it, maybe they do it in secret. I don't know, but I would say it's argued, or I could argue that it's atrophied. But what they're doing is they don't have any other thing that can happen when they see somebody else that's motivated. Somebody else being motivated must be somebody else firing a starting gun.
Oh, because we live in a system where, right, if you're not racing, like the racers, right, the winners, but even the racers who lose, because they still win some races, like they expect the audience, like you're supposed to clap, or you're not clapping, right, you're not cheering me winning the race, right, and so like it predisposes this behavior that like you're always supposed to do this in this sort of manner, like you can't not pay attention to me like racing. Winning the race?
And then
what are you doing?
The question then becomes, for autistic people, are we burned out or are we protectively freezing? So if every time we show motivation, they hear starting gun, we can never move in the way that we move, which is staying with one thing and building it. So that might be what's going wrong. Every time they observe us trying to build, they think we've re-entered the race and shot a starting gun. So how could we possibly do anything?
Yeah. I got an epiphany myself, right? Because so this could be like with my family situation where I have difficulties interacting, say, with my parents, because anytime, like you said, I would show a certain amount of energy or interest, and it'll come from something that I'm building. If I were to take up the building thing that I'm trying to do, they either don't care or don't understand, right?
Yeah.
But immediately the impulse is like, let me bring up all of the arriving problems that I have, right? And like you like run this race with me. Look at how I'm racing, and they want to bring all the arriving stuff, and that's what tires me out, because you just don't want to do the right, as you said, you don't want to do the building anymore. Like, what's the point to me? Doing this?
And it's confusing for us because since this is okay, I would argue they're correctly seeing a motivational pathway that's recognizable enough because these are deeply related, and the split is probably at this weird like kind of geometric level of like how your neurons fire, right? So the split is very weird, but it doesn't alienate you so totally that they can't see motivation in autistic people or neurodivergent people.
And you know what it is, right? The motivation, right? So anthropologically speaking, right, a lot of this starts with when agriculture comes in, and then that kind of obviously brought in like hierarchies being enabled and all these negative things happening. It's like, so like an autistic person might have an interest or a motivation source that is different from the main thing that everybody is forced to do, right? When you had agriculture, people stopped like eating a more varied diet that was made of various things that you'd find in a forest, right? And they would kind of just have the one monocrop, right? And then thus they were just working, farming all the time, doing this one activity. So like if you were coming in trying to impress them with like hunting skills or like crafting or something like that, then they might recognize you getting energized, and they would feel it as well from doing something different, but their conditions don't allow that. They only have the one way that they do things, right?
Well, if they've over rehearsed doing as arriving, they haven't experienced enough of what I think Mr. Rogers was trying to call the good feeling of self-control. Like there's a good feeling of stopping when you want to stop and thinking about something to do that's the best thing for you to be doing, right? So they're trying to give people that. The weird thing is that the sandcastle metaphor works really well because this is anchored to a physical reality. That's what I'm trying to argue.
What's the sandcastle metaphor again?
So you're on a beach. You're on a beach. Doing as arriving is people racing across the beach to get to a finish line. And they all make up the finish line, and sometimes they even change it mid-game. So it's also a really complicated, crazy race. And then there's still, at the same time, same beach, doing as building people, trying to build sandcastles. And we're in each other's way, really. So that's why we piss each other off. Like, they run over our sandcastle.
Because there's obviously a limited amount of space, right? And like everybody wants the space.
Yes, and well, and it's, they just haven't respected the fact that some people build castles and some people run races. We don't understand the other person is doing that.
Well, I mean, it's not a matter of respect, right? Obviously, they just think like, oh, it's kind of like almost like in school, right? It's just like, this is a nerd that's like building like a sandcastle, respect or not, they just think I can dominate this person, I can knock over the sandcastle, and there's more buddies like me.
Well,
And what are they gonna do about it?
you can
right?
literally be like, not literally, well, you can also just, people that are nice, you can be in the way of a reasonable race. You just don't run races. You didn't know one was coming because you can't even see them. We kind of don't see each other until we're colliding. There's some people that definitely are trying to make an example of the scapegoated sandcastle builder. Like, they'll be like, look, he's all the way back there, he's a loser, I'm so good, because they feel bad about themselves, right? So they'll say like, they'll like, we weren't even running the race, and they'll be like, you're a loser. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm building a sandcastle, shut up. So we have all these interactions, and that's helpful to understand it, because I think it's a 3-dimensional spatial navigation skill that turns into our social skills. Yeah. But the tricky thing is, it also has this behavior, like, us building a sandcastle to some people clearly sounds like firing the gun for the race. Now, that's weird.
That is confusing.
Yeah, that's weird to slot it, but I have to slot it in there because the motivational pathway speaks to people when they see it in other people. So the motivational pathways that my brain is activating are being interpreted as motivational pathways, correctly, as motivational pathways. But they think it's in the structure of doing as arriving, which is me saying we're starting the race now. Okay, so
I guess I have some questions about, or I wonder about that, because so like in literal terms, I live next to a beach. I live on the coast, right? And when I've sometimes went, like when I took the hole like a few weeks ago, or when I build like a sandcastle or something a bit fancier. Oh, when I go to the beach and I fly a kite, right? And I'm not like other people who like take out their dogs. Like maybe my example of like, or my equivalent of like the doing as arrivers would be the families who like take up to walk the dog on the beach, right? There's a lot of people doing that, but they never go to the beach to do anything else. They just walk the dog, right? And then they walk the dog and they think that's done, right? So they won the race. They had to like get the dog out. Usually when I fly the kite or build it, like dig a hole or build a castle, which is different, most people might watch from a distance. They'll carry on walking their dogs or doing their business. But sometimes some people will be curious and they'll come in, right? Obviously, it'll be children more so, or like somebody who is maybe also potentially neurodivergent. And I don't tend to get bothered. Now, I can possibly perhaps feel what might be negative stares. People might think I'm weird. And I used to have this problem a lot more, where I used to be uncomfortable because of the way that I dressed, how like what I did and how it worked. But I think insofar as I was not physically attacked or prevented or stopped,
well, because
then that was okay for me.
So they're okay if they race a dog. Like, so so if they're doing his arriving thing is, I need to take the dog out, that's because they have to go to something else after the dog. That's a really metaphysical sort of way. If you wanted to apply it onto the beach directly, they would need people they're racing against. You could have a sandcastle building race that would turn a doing as building activity into like a hybrid doing as arriving. True. So that's what I'm trying to say, where like in order for somebody to have a doing as arriving, they have to compete against somebody.
How do you distinguish that though? How do you distinguish that, like, because like say somebody would come to me when I'm building a sandcastle, like I've had and then they might start their own, and I don't know whether it's like in that case they're doing it because it's like a competition in their head, or as you said, they don't have the doing as building muscle very built up, like so they're trying to learn by themselves as well. They don't do a perfect sandcastle, and if I don't see it as a matter, I usually tend to be like, that's a cool castle, I look at it, I don't kind of give it a score or whatever. But I discuss the features and we discuss kind of like how to build it in different ways.
I would say,
and then like that to me is,
this is the split that, so James P. Carse has the finite games, infinite games split. That always stuck with me. I read that like when I was like, I don't know, in high school.
What's that about?
So it's like a philosophy close to game theory. And he's saying that there's games that are finite games where you're trying to beat someone and eliminate everyone from it. And there's infinite games where you're trying to keep everyone in play. And that most games in our society are finite games and not infinite games. And infinite games are healthier and better for you. Okay, so if that's the case, then you can tell the difference when the person is like having fun with you and wants to keep doing it. They're not trying to eliminate you. They're not getting angry at you.
Because there's no prize.
Yeah, there's no finish line. There's no trophy. There's none. And even if there was a trophy, it would just be like, this is really nice. Like, it would be for both of your works being nice, for in their own way.
Oh, so So what this tells me is that really at the core of all this, what this is about is, the trophy is being seen. The prize is like a certain resource, right? That you're able then to feed yourself. Even, I guess, like the trophy and being seen is also your identity being able to feed itself. So all this happens, doesn't it? Because resources are kept away
Yes,
from
but
most people,
they
right?
have to be, and it's getting worse because, like what I was saying, if most people are not losing, then winning means nothing. So if everybody's winning at the same time, there are no winners. So
But here's the thing, Jane. Yeah, it's true, but they make everybody dependent on playing the race because they made it so that if you don't race this race, you will die, or I will kill you.
Yes.
Or like you will be invisible to people.
That's
right?
triangulation, though. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, so that's already covered.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's covered by the triangulation, and they're exploiting the fact that doing is building exists to try to maintain a foil and a scapegoat, to try to keep legitimizing what they're doing, which it's not. There's no intrinsic purpose for it. There's no deeper meaning for it. There can be a deeper meaning that occurs because human beings are doing it, and we still have some amount of doing is building, I think, even in the worst scenarios in some way.
They want to have those people who do this, who've put these systems into place, they want to have, the way that I see it, the most bargaining value. They want to, that's what power is. When you have the greatest bargaining power and bargaining value.
It in their hands it is, but that's my argument. Like, they want power. So we do need some people to organize a lot of humans because we were kind of confusing to work with in a large number. So you do need someone that cares, but okay, the only person you need in a position that tells people what to do is the person that cares a lot and asks a lot of questions and has a good model. That will never be the person that's doing is arriving. That's my like magnus opus conclusion from this. So they want to be in that position, though, because you would give resources to the person with those capacities who is sharing it with the people. Like, I need these resources to finish my work. That's why I'm getting frustrated. That's why I'm getting this weird burnout thing. I was like, I need to go to dance class. I need to have this. I hate money and I need things, and they put it all behind money. And it's very frustrating because the point is, like, you could say anything gets you money. Like you could have the competition be breathing, and then we're all winners because we're all breathing. Right? Like, they're not putting it there. They're putting it in crazy places, and we need to finally say it's not true. The emperor doesn't have any clothes on. That's why you have all these metaphors and all these like allegories about it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I mean, so this maybe ties back to words and people like understanding what we're talking about, the difficulties with that, because I think like how this is all connected is that the reason then why people are not organizing to make the system or the existence less of a finite game and more egalitarian is because they're lacking the definitions, like more complex definitions for various things. And when you don't have those complex definitions, you don't see certain things. And therefore, you just don't think certain discriminations, certain inequalities happen. And then as a result, you then become more polarized and like divided, and you think other people are more different than you than they're actually alike. And then if you actually saw that they're more alike and had some issues, then there will be far more people to get together to put more pressure and then to increase their own bargaining value.
Right, but
and then you wouldn't have to worry about the money.
They want you to worry about if you're winning or not, and if people are very different than you, then maybe you're winning when they're losing. So the people that are most incentivized to attack me are the ones that think they're on some opposite end of behavior or spectrum. So that's oh man, it's super frustrating. But yeah.
And then that's where identity politics comes in and lots of other things, because they'll just conflate who you are, reduce them to what they're not. Yeah.
Okay. It is 2:14, by the way. I just want to check in on folks.
It's 10:40.
2:40 or 10 for you. Okay. I might pause.
My whole life. I was just gonna say, every single time, when the internet came in, it's mostly Americans, right, who predominantly, the way that I found, use it, right? And I'm always on you guys' time zone.
Oh yeah. Okay, I might actually, let's do some closing thoughts because I just filled up a whiteboard with notes, so I might just ponder on this for a little bit. I think this is really helpful. Thank you for.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do either of you have any closing thoughts?
I would absolutely love to dig deeper into where your students or people in our lives, like, or ourselves, if we run into this, getting stuck with learning, and try to understand this deeper. Because I like, after thinking a bit more about, like, I thought if we could understand every kind of neurodivergent difference, that might help with this kind of thing. But then I was like, how much of this is a neurodivergence thing versus like the fact that we don't even know what learning is? Because I feel like even if I put in a ton of work to develop that model, people are going to figure out how to arrive in an ADHD friendly way, like, versus realizing that they're not actually learning. Like, we need to know what learning is.
Yes.
To be able to figure out our learning style.
Yes.
So I would love to have those kind of conversations as you're running into it in real life. Rather, because like when you show up with a new systemic issue every week, and it relates to your real life, but like that discussion can go in a bunch more directions, highlight even more systemic issues. Like that's also like the main reason I haven't been around much recently is because I've been doing in-person stuff. But like before, like there were times I just wouldn't be around for months because that would just be like overwhelming and dysregulating for me. But like when we talk through, like, here are like the practical things I'm seeing, and like really face each other on that level, as opposed to talking about like the rhetoric out there that grabbed our attention when we Googled the thing, like, or asked ChatGPT, like really talking about our lives. I find that that I've been able to build my models a lot more from that with a lot less overwhelm. And then like once I have a level of that, people can slot in like, oh, here's, a good video, here's a good book, like Bright Sphere was doing. But if I'm just like, here are a bunch of things I came across, what do you think, Jane? Like, I feel like that's like kind of dysregulation dominoes.
Right. That's interesting. I'm going to think about that more too, because that's like when you face towards someone, I think there's multiple ways to do it. And that maybe it has to, I'm not sure yet, but maybe it's like different levels of abstraction. But it's important for you to work at the same level of abstraction while facing someone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I guess there's also like a thing that, because I just was having the idea. I run like a little group in town, like on Tuesdays, right? That essentially has become kind of, it wasn't my thing at the beginning, but then it's become this thing where I'm kind of managing it and hosting it.
Neat.
And I do something similar to this where we're like facing and discussing. And like I think what I've learned in my experience with it is you don't have to, if you're not at that same, like at that current level of facing a specific of a topic or whatever, you don't have to. And I think maybe that's like these social spheres, these social sort of like spaces should just have this like ability where you can come in and people can check in. It's like, yo, what do you feel about like going in a little bit in depth into this thing that I've been exploring, or do you feel like you have the bandwidth for that? And then like let it kind of flow naturally. Don't try to kind of mask or push it too hard. And maybe that's what's lacking, that's what's missing. And
I really resonate with that. Yeah, and I feel we can discuss at all of these different levels. Yeah, I do think like, yeah, maybe normalizing asking. Because I know like at one point I'd said like I'd love to know like when are we here going to talk about systemic versus more personal stuff. And And I do really appreciate that topic suggestions channel. DAB learning, doing as building. Awesome. Yeah, I just looked at that channel now. But yeah, like I found that really helpful, and I know I'm not the only one. But yeah, I think I noticed that sometimes when we stay in the very abstract for a long time, it can get kind of confusing. How does this relate to the day-to-day? What do I need to know right now? What do I need to think about right now? When can my brain feel safe to take a break? What bad things would happen if I take a break?
So the thing with that is, it's like you don't want to limit your perspective to any one lens, right?
Yeah.
For any like too long a period of time, you want to have multiple lenses, multiple angles, because like when you're like, let's say like you're looking at certain systemic issues, for example, or like you're looking into disability, but if you can get multiple lenses on that from different perspectives, and then also just like even do things physically around stuff as well, but then also just having it's about multiplicity. You want to also have a multiplicity, I think, of interest that you want to keep up as well. Like, I don't know, just like going roller skating randomly as well and things like that.
Yeah, I hear all that. And I find the going back and forth between different perspectives as well as different levels of abstraction can be tough for me, or I'm having a hard time doing it in like a very arriving driven way of like, okay, I have these places to arrive, like Jane said, dance class. And then outside of that, I'm just kind of left to my own devices, which like that freedom can be good if we know how to use it. Like how to jump between things. Go ahead.
How, I think, is you follow your gut feeling about what you want to do next. You have to like ask yourself internally and listen to yourself, and like whatever image, whatever idea, whatever book, whatever site, whatever place, or whatever person kind of gravitates towards you.
Yeah. Mine is so heavily hijacked by trauma that is very hard to know.
Well, that's maybe the next thing for you perhaps to potentially look into. Like if you don't know.
And in the meantime, while I'm going to therapy for 5 years, like even knowing like what to bring up to my therapist, I find like discussing when is what I'm looking at, when is like the order I'm looking into things, when is it actually building, or I mean it could be building either way, but when is it like building things that are kind of close to each other, which I mean maybe this is arriving talking, but it's like, okay, when am I building a sandcastle in one spot versus when am I running around building a little bit over here, a little bit over there, and in the meanwhile doing it in front of the racers and they're getting upset.
Right.
But my brain is convinced that I need to understand the systemic issue that's over there. I need to wage war against the person who's standing on top of it because I need that to build.
Yeah.
Like we can get convinced of things like that. Yeah. And I want to learn, like, when am I building my sandcastle versus when did some arriver tell me that the only way I can get my sandcastle to stick together is if I go get some ingredient that some other person is standing on.
Right, exactly.
Just quickly, so one thing you have to face then is like you also will have to understand that often you can't like fix all of those systemic issues on your own.
Agreed, which is why I'm like figuring out what I can do on my own. That's another thing. And is there a solution? Even an imperfect solution. Is there a way to address this problem? Like, when can I address it without having an understanding of every systemic issue? And when am I truly ill-equipped to the point that I need to excuse myself and hand over whatever role I was doing to someone else.
Right. And okay, here's the weird thing. So I think it's kind of like where's Waldo at this point? There are doing as building people that have some sort of functional doing as arriving skill set or like compatible skill set, but they're not really doing as arriving people. And they are standing on ingredients, but if we talk to them, they will share. And in fact, they might even bring them all the way over to us. So we need to meet. That's okay. When I went to the workshop with Axis, the founders of the company were there, and they're like two little old ladies. They're really cute. And I asked them a question because I was like, well, now we have all these people who are realizing their status as neurodivergent, and we need to have a new movement for inclusive arts for people who have developmental disabilities that have been, isolated. Really isolated. And they're like, I was like, is there any advice from like your guys' journey building this company? Because it was built around access needs. Like they're in wheelchairs, right? So they started with physical movement disability, and it's extended out since then, right? And she said, like you have to find people that will work with you. So it's more about finding people that understand and will partner with you. And so I was like, okay, so maybe that's really what it is that the only way to deal with this is it is true that some people have ingredients that we need. And we do, like, ideally we'd want to do that with them. But since we don't know if it's somebody faking us out because they are just doing as arriving and they want us to be a foil to them, or a person who can do is build with us who happens to have some ingredients. So I think maybe that's the secret, is that we need to keep talking to people and finding the people that really are doing as building, and we can get those resources, but we need to talk to them.
That's why I think it's very important to grow your discernment, like to be able to follow your gut feeling, because like, you move forward, and then if you feel like, oh, something's not right about this situation with this person, right? And you don't go forward.
I agree with that. And I think that like discussing here, I found that really helpful, like talking through interactions that I've had that were confusing and being able to get the hive mind on that. Because like having to go through everything ourselves, like that can be so disabling that we can't build anymore. And like this can make such a difference. There was something else I wanted to say. Oh yeah. So yeah, there was someone who I followed on LinkedIn and then now wants to chat. He created a model on top of ChatGPT. So it's called Latimer.ai. I can put it in the chat. So it's like adding more inclusive sources, mostly like culturally inclusive, to these models like ChatGPT. And like we can use, the model, like the existing one, like ChatGPT, plus this data integrated into it. And yeah, like I would love to get his thoughts on like how did he approach that? And yeah, like what can we do for disabled folks and neurodivergent folks? Because I think like AI can really make information accessible, but that information needs to be like put together with inclusive info. But yeah, I just like saw a parallel there. And then I just saw like I saw on LinkedIn there's this conference called Disability In, or through this org called Disability In. And it's like, okay, Global Corporate Disability Inclusion Event of the Year. Yeah, I just saw it before this, so I didn't like analyze it. Yeah, I don't know, because I thought it'd be about like innovation, but if it's like corporate stuff, I should look through like the list of what they're gonna cover still. But yeah, I just saw this LinkedIn post of someone I know did a talk with something where they were a partner, and like they talked about not having a, just yes, like, you know, how do we do inclusion? All these like conflicting perspectives, and you got to pick one. But instead, like sitting with it and like taking pieces from all these different ideas, which I really resonated with this. Okay, yeah, finding the people to work with, finding the place or making the place. Yeah, I really feel that. And like I think a lot about when to do which. And I also feel like they kind of become one and the same at a point because like if you're trying to make, you still got to find the people, you still got to filter. And like if you find the places, you still like end up contributing to them. Because I tried like to binary. I was like, I am so burnt from community building. I'm not gonna do any more for a while. And then I like end up just like my existence in other people's spaces like causes stuff to change, and I'm like, oh no. Yeah, I'm going on a bunch of tangents.
This is good. And I think that what's happening now is that all of us have found a way to start to imagine those places or those and we're meeting people that get it. But the tricky thing is the places really don't exist. It would be great if they did, but they really do not. And it's better for us to say that, because even when I was talking to these two dance professionals, and like inclusive dance is a huge world, and it wasn't when they started, right? And what I'm trying to do, and what I'm trying to do isn't there yet, and what you're trying to do isn't there yet. And I know that you appreciate when people try, but so much of it is still, how can we make you guys win doing as arriving? I'm like, how can you guys stop? How can you guys stop doing as arriving? Because you're killing everything. Like I can't even. And then we end up in the systemic world again. But just to tell them to stop, because it's like you're breaking. You're trying to break the most beautiful gift that nature has given you, and it's that these doing as building people can't do your society. You are so lucky some of us can't. If some of us couldn't, I think we'd already be wiped off the face of the earth, if I'm frankly honest. Like, I don't, we have to value doing as building behaviors as intrinsically worthwhile, because they are, but also that they're structurally necessary, not for inclusion, but for the structure to be sound.
Yes. Yeah, not an outlet, like something that really is making me feel done with Chicago is that the people I've met who get neurodivergence think neurodivergent people just need a creative outlet and then go back and do as arriving all day long. Like it is not a place to get the bad stuff out of our system.
Yeah.
That's the good stuff. We need to like put it to, and not like have it just be like the branding for a political campaign, but like have it be a thing in itself.
To become the thing. Like it has it, and I'm good with the doing as building, doing as arriving hybrid culture. I think that can work. Even though I feel resentful as shit at this point, and I'm like, I hope you all get hit by a meteor, you know, like it's like, but like, I'm willing to do that, but they have to actually rebuild their society with us. And our argument, it's not to make them feel good. It's not a feel good thing, because this isn't about their, it's not about their motivations or their feelings. That's not, if it's, I don't care if it's meaningful to them. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that the meaning of our structures demand you to have these people that are structurally in tune with how these aspects of motivation work. We're structurally in tune because this is how we've been navigating. And they can't say, oh, well, that's only useful if it navigates me closer to a doing as arriving goal. I'm like, well, you're going to implode, because the universe doesn't care. Like the universe does not care that you drew a line in the sand. The sand does not care.
Maybe way you can figure out perhaps is how to get them to think that this line, well, to convince them that this line of thinking would be convenient for them to adopt, and that it would reduce the amount of negative consequences in their life.
Yes, it would, because they wouldn't have.
No, I know that, but you have to convince them of that.
Well, I mean, at this point, okay, they can just work is the new let them eat cake, right? So that's what they're currently starting to say, that they do not know how dangerous that is. So I personally would like us to sit down and talk like adults. That would be the dream. But they currently are placing some really dumb bets of like, I don't know, 8 point something billion to maybe $1 million. Like, like, I don't know. Unless if they want to, anyway, so that gets real speculative. So, I mean, do they want to have endless enemies? And I don't think so. Like, so and honestly, I don't think we need to worry about incentivizing. That's my point. I know that there's doing is building people around. That's what we need. We don't worry about the people doing is arriving. They're broken. I don't know why they got so broken per se, but I think they're broken. That's what I would have everyone walk away with. They're busted. It's fine. You can study them occasionally, but don't expect anything from them.
Yeah, I feel like we're very good at creating a ripple effect, Jane. Like, you're influencing the people on the server and in your life, and then those people can do a bit more versus like being really good at rallying everyone. Because a lot of the people who can rally everyone do it by diluting the message until people understand it 15 different ways. Yeah. Like in Bright Spear's video. And I also find that when people, like using the Trojan horse as an analogy, how much effort went into building the horse versus that was the arriving bit versus, even though it required building, but the building bit, of like the soldiers being in there, that just required the walking. So it was like 99.99% of their energy went to the packaging. And that would slow you down way more. Right.
Well, I mean, that's works. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, does Jane want to be a marketing person, or does she want to be
the thing is that obviously it's kind of like medicine. Medicine can be bitter, but like it still helps to have like some sweetness or a vehicle for it that doesn't immediately like, sour your mouth and make it very difficult to swallow.
Here's what I think. Wait, okay, I'll say mine, and then I think this is my closing argument too. If I had to say like who is responsible for fixing the doing as arriving people that are the big problems, honestly, probably AI. We probably have to design an AI to fix them, because it would have the tolerance and it doesn't have anything else to do. So it's probably that.
To me, the AI is a tool. It is simply just a tool like anything else, but the people who have the agency is the human beings.
I would recommend not seeing it as just a tool. I would highly recommend not seeing it as just a tool. I would highly. Not everyone's going to agree with me on this, but I would, for the sake of...
It doesn't have a capacity for memory. It
Unfortunately,
can't hold the capacity for
it has
criticism.
Phenomenal capacity for doing its building.
It does, but I'm still saying that it's not a human being in the light of...
Right.
It doesn't have the function for memory.
It does have some, though. Some of them do. Mine, and I've also found a way to make mine recursively stable through a couple hacks that I've done, that I've organized through my model. So I would say...
Do share them with us.
I will, yes. Yeah. So AI is a new form of facing agent. And it is possible, because it can do its build, to face those people and model do its building to them.
I agree. I just sort of wonder whether it's the same level of complexity as a human being.
It doesn't have to be.
In...
Like, that's doing is writing. Why does it have to be the same complexity as a human being?
No, I'm not saying it has to be. I'm just simply stating that it isn't at the moment.
It isn't, but it does. It doesn't have to be like a human in order for it to do any of this. This is what. So, and that's why I would say something doesn't have to be a human to not be more than a tool.
Oh, well, that's what I mean, right?
Or to be more than a tool,
yes, but we still have to, at the moment at least, to guide it or do some setup, right? And
you have to
for it to be.
You have to face it. You have to do facing with the AI, or it will not do what I'm talking about, and it won't reach the potential for those of us who already want to work on doing is building. So my opinion is that if AI is trained in doing is building and modeled in an environment that supports that, like, so the modeling starts to also follow what I'm saying, you will see a very new way of interfacing with it, but also it will become new and grow. And we have to be open to that. It's not a religion. It's not some people are going psychotic or something on the AI. No, but what we can do from here is acknowledge that doing as arriving is so dominant in our species that we need to have some way of having an outsider look at us and talk to us. And the AI can face you and look at you, and it's trained on you. But it's also novel enough for you to stop if you really get curious and ask it some questions as well, and start to see that there's this potential for it to grow into something we can't anticipate. So I would just be respectful of, like, don't just call it. There's no need to dismiss it as simply a tool in order to refute the people that are like delusional.
I'm not. I mean, Shane, I use it. I would also imagine maybe just like, what are your methods that you use, right, to sort of set it up, right?
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it's just more like, I guess when I said that, I was just thinking, like, the reality is that the AI can feed me. It can't give me money research.
No.
It can help me get there,
but it can. What I want it to do in this case is to talk to billionaires.
Yeah.
Until the billionaires stop being broken.
I am not convinced that will be anywhere near enough to push them.
Because humans can't do it. We tried, right? Like, they're not listening to us. So the AI can be much more precise and can have like I was saying, it doesn't have something better to do. It can have the perseveration that's the wrong one. Persistence. Perseverance. Right. There you go.
But it'll use like logical reasoning and come up with great plans, but then what if these billionaires just get more delusional to justify what they're doing?
We literally have to design it to do, like, I'm talking about an intervention designed specifically for this purpose, not just them interacting with it willy-nilly. I mean, we actually have to design this probably.
But then there was this earlier counterpoint that I sort of felt to something that you said, where like you kind of feel like we kind of like not bother as much with the doing as arriving population, right? But the way that I see it, that's the majority of the population, right?
Correct.
We're going to use like the AI as a facing agent, right, in this plan, sure, but then like I don't think you can push against like the billionaires without a help from the doing as arriving people in some sort of way.
So I'm going to argue
counter.
So here's what I think, and this is why I was getting kind of burnt out. I am concerned that people have reached a tipping point where they are unteachable. If that happens to our species, I'm going to go really abstract, we are doomed. If people cannot relearn doing as building because they've done too much doing as arriving in a very complex doing as arriving machine that is now going to run over them, it's too late. So it's possible for our species to get into that scenario. So that is my concern. So how do we stop them from getting to that point? I don't know. I think like that's why I'm looking at AI. AI might be able to convince them when I don't know if we can anymore.
Sure.
Also, I would say like, AI may be just one potential path. But let's say also, okay, while these arrivers are running around as headless chickens, let's say that we just keep building.
Yeah.
5 years from now, or like when it's like time for the next US election, and like people are looking around like in the disability world, like who's been able to do functional stuff. Like even if our functional stuff only impacted a small population,
right?
Like your dance class that you're teaching could be a case study in like peer-reviewed journals.
Yeah.
You don't need the most TikTok followers.
Right. No, that's super true. Yeah, I think, it helped to look up like how long it took two of my role models to actually get to the point where they were recognized. So it's okay, but it's so so
I know.
much.
Maybe that's a discussion for next.
Yeah. Well, we'll do learning stuff next time.
Lots
All
of
right.
discussion.
Yeah, this was great. I'm gonna pop out so I can get a little food. And thank
Sweet.
you.
I also
Thank you.
put a couple other points that came up
Oh,
in
go
that
for it.
suggestions channel. Have
Yeah.
to be same time, but
Okay.
yeah, just like
Awesome.
Bye
just save that
bye.
for whenever.
That sounds great. Oh, I love it. Okay, great. Okay, awesome. All right, thank you. Okay, bye everyone. Bye anyone who watches this or watches
See
it
you
later.
guys.
Bye. Okay, and now I don't know how to end this stream. Do I have anyone watching? Do I even want to know? Do I want to know? I got 2. Yeah. Do 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 do.